they never really see. By yours truly, 00HOCWWID. So, in the developing stages of a child, that is very, very crucial timing. Very crucial timing. Every parental, every adult, every guardian, whatever, play an important role in the development of that child. That child is collecting information from these people, hoping that they direct them correct. But, during that journey of, development and growing, trauma occurs. Trauma occurs in the household. Trauma occurs in the schools, even extracurricular stuff like clubs and whatnot. Any after school stuff, sports, whatever. There's trauma that can take place in those settings as well. Because number one, with school is just one big giant cesspool of dysfunction from other households combining in one. So you got kids coming from who knows what household, what may be going on in their household. But every child is raised differently, especially when it comes to the household, because every household is dysfunctional in its own way. Some are worse than others. But anyway, so trauma occurs in these places during the developing stages. It could be from teachers, students, any other position that deals with the kids, to even parents, other kids' parents, you never know. But basically, as the child is in the developing stages, it's collecting everything, it's learning everything. And when trauma occurs, that's the stuff that sticks. That's the stuff that causes a lot of damage. But the thing is whether it's the parents or a guardian or the teacher, principal, one of the other kids' parents, or maybe it's a bully, they never will ever see the damage that they really did. They'll never see it. They might get a glimpse of it on the surface, but they'll never be able to see what is going on internally. Now, when it comes to parentals, our guardians, the ones that you spend a high majority of your living as a kid, that's the ones where any trauma that occurs in that setting, you can't leave. You are staying there, So whether the trauma gets more severe and more severe and more severe, you still have to come there. You still have to live there. And, like I said, they'll just see the damage that they did on the surface, but they'll never know what they did internally, because every child responds to trauma differently. But the thing is that trauma never leaves. What it does is it stunts them. So they continue to grow as a child, but yet they're stunted every time more trauma is added on to the trauma that has already happened. And the thing is that gets worse and worse and worse. And then the kid ends up going through phases in the teen years. Of course, the parents just think, oh, it's just a phase. They'll grow out of it, blah blah blah. But the thing is the phases that go through the teen years are a reflection of trauma that they're going through. It's like a cry for help, you know, because it's all in a matter of how they're acting out. It's like crying and screaming, you know. So then that gets them stuck up in groups that can connect with the trauma that they might be going through, which is only going to add more to it. I mean, sure, it sounds like it's a recovery group because, oh, these people can relate to me. But the thing is none of these people's households identify 100% with your household. So you're going to be learning some stuff from them, like maybe some coping ways, some coping mechanisms to deal with it, whatever. But the thing is as trauma piles on, the kid is going to find ways to escape. And that is when the addiction process begins. They start getting so used to escaping that the psychological trauma that has already happened, it's getting worse the more they escape. And the thing is as they grow older, get older and they get into adulthood, well, once the developing stages are done, all that trauma, all that adapting, all that escaping, of all those coping mechanisms that child has learned, to deal with the environment of the household that they were in, it's lock and key once the developing stages are done. So when adulthood hits, a lot of the times they never grow out of it. They never grow out of that pattern. They are continuously doing the pattern, but the pattern has gotten worse. It just gets worse as you age because it's not going to have the same effect as it once did. So they're going to start adding things and adding things and adding things, And eventually, I'm pretty sure, well, I mean, it's different for each household. I mean, I've seen people where, they still live with their mom and dad and they're almost going on 30, But even there, that trauma still lingers because they're still in the household where the trauma took place. They're still in the environment where the trauma took place. They're still around the people that caused the trauma where it took place. But the thing is they don't even know. They can't even correspond with damage that they have done. All they do is see you and the way that you're acting, and they say, well, he or she's a grown adult. Like, they need to take responsibility instead of looking back at their upbringing and some stuff that may have happened that stunted them to be the way they are. That's one thing that they refuse to do. And the reason why is because they never looked within themselves to see what was wrong with them in the first place. So why would they do it to their own child if they never even done it to themselves? That's what I mean. They will never really see the damage that is done because the internal suffering that's going on within that child, it stays internal. Because if you speak up, something might happen. You might get grounded, whipped, or whatever. Some kind of punishment to just further add to the trauma that has already happened. It just piles on until you learn. But the thing is it's not correcting anything. It's just making things worse. I mean, now you have a more reason to escape. And but when you get into that adulthood, let's say you move out, well, now the codependency that you had on the household and the way the rules and regulations went down and you had to abide in a certain manner, well, now those mannerisms are going into the real world. They're going into the real world. And the thing is this is where it gets very hectic. And this is the part where they will never see, because when it comes to mental health, as you get older, that trauma that was there during the developing stages, it gets worse. And the coping mechanisms start to stop working. So you got to go find more coping mechanisms, because it's getting worse and worse and worse. The turmoil's piling up, piling up, piling up. You're trying to find other ways to escape. But the thing is nothing is fixing it. It's like it's never ending. That is what they never will see. They will never see. They will see it from an external route. They'll see it from what it is, what the eyes can see, but they'll never really look at the psychological damage that was caused during the developing stages that caused that. They won't ever look in there. It's been swept under the rug and it's been forgotten. If you try to bring it up, more than likely, they won't remember. They can't recall. Because it's been forgotten. Because one thing about that generation of parentals and adults is there was a motive of sweeping things under the rug and forgetting about it. You know, just telling yourself, I'm happy, I'm fine. This is what men go through, or this is what women are supposed to go through. That type of stuff, to just kind of sweep it under the rug and normalize it. But the thing is we progress generation to generation to generation, the trauma's getting worse. The cries for help are more blatant. They're a lot more. It's a lot more loud than the previous generation, because the previous generation, they suppressed it well. But the thing is with that suppression, it just caused even more internal struggling that caused a lot of neglect in the process for that future generation to come. And since a lot of the generation of adults today went through a lot of emotional neglect, now the trauma, when they get into adulthood, it's crying for help. They have to be constantly offended. They have to constantly, be heard. They're letting their cries for help, their cries for pain, and just years of suffering that they've endured, and they constantly have to cope and cope and cope and cope, but the coping mechanisms aren't working as well as they used to. It's because your brain is irritated. Your brain wants to be relieved. Your brain wants you to go get help. Because living in that condition and, clinging to, toxic company, or, a toxic relationship, or, toxic environments, that have you partaking in things that you shouldn't be partaking in, but it helps you with the escaping. But the thing is when the next day hits, you're struck again and you got to escape even more the next day. That's how it is with age, because your brain does not like it. Like, if our brains had legs and it could move, our brains would have left our body a long time ago because of the stuff that we put up with in our developing stages. But the thing is that trauma, if it's never ever corrected and never fixed, the coping mechanisms get worse and worse and worse. The things that you are using to escape begin to evolve in other things, and the pattern just gets worse and worse, and eventually the down spiral begins to get so deep that you dig this hole that you really can't get out of because you've been doing it for years. And say you did through the 20s, you escaped through the 30s. I believe when you hit that 40s, it's harder. It's even harder to get out of it. 30s, you might be able to, you might not be able to. 20s is the crucial time frame to get out of it, to stop trying to find ways to escape from it and just do something about it. Get something done. Because that's when you can get stuff done. It's like a college session, so you might have to go see a therapist for a while. By the time you're done with the whole process, it's going to be like 3 to 4 years max. But the thing is you can't beat that type of timing. It's because it's in the 20s. Now, if you wait for your 30s, those 3 to 4 years, that could go into 10 years. And if you wait till you're 40, well, geez, it might take 15 years, because it's just piling on every single time. The more stuff that you partake in, that adds into the psychological state and the psychological frame of mind. They got to add all that in. Like, man, you go into, some of these halfway houses, man, they got like dual diagnosis and triple diagnoses, and, it gets more complex with stuff that you add. And, people don't understand that. They don't get that. But they keep doing it. But, eventually when they try to turn their life around, it ain't no game. It ain't no joke, But all this is suffering. It's all suffering. It's all lingered trauma from whatever happened in the developing stages that made that person that way. There's a reason behind the escaping, but the thing is a lot of the parentals, they just kind of shrug it off and say, well, they're an adult. They chose to do it themselves. But they don't even want to reflect on how was their parenting? What did you do? They never get to see it. But, as the parentals get older, they, surface level wise, they may be able to see that they did wrong. And you might be able to hear something. Accept that something. Just accept it, because accept it and forgive if they do. And if they don't, still forgive them. Holding on to the past only causes more harm. But the thing is you can't forget it, though. You never forget it. You can't forget it. But you can forgive it. Just forgive. You want to forgive for your own benefit so that you can move forward and take your life back. But the thing is, with a lot of the trauma that occurred, a lot of people choose to take the route of resentment, and they talk so ill on their parents or their guardians. They just talk so much hate. It's one thing to tell your story, but it's another thing to just make your story a big negative when your story can be used for encouragement and inspiration to maybe reach out to someone who might be going through the same thing or worse. But if you're just spewing a lot of hate, that's not doing anything. That's just causing more turmoil. And, but I mean, you might get to so as the parental or the guardian gets older, you might hear something from them. Just accept it. Just say, okay, no problem. And if you don't, oh well, just keep moving forward. Just let it go. Because there are some where they'll never see it. And that's something you got to accept. They'll never see what they've done. Or maybe they see what they've done, but they've just suppressed it. And they swept it under the rug like they usually do. But the thing is when you do that, that just creates a lot of bitterness. So you'll see it in their old age. If they begin to grow bitter and they just keep getting bitter by the years, it's because they're not expressing how they really feel. Because they're seeing, a glimpse on surface level of what they have created. But the thing is they never get to see the full amount of damage that occurred behind closed doors during that person's alone time. They didn't get to see the dark depths of the trauma that they created within the mind of that living being. They'll never get to see it. They can only get a glimpse that's on surface level, but they never get a glimpse of the actual internal suffering that just prolongs. It just prolongs. Now, I do have my own theory on it. And, as the parental or guardian gets older, when they get to the point of death, I do think that everything that was endured from that child, they see everything. They see everything. They feel the pain, the internal suffering. They feel it. They see you grow up. They see everything that's going on behind closed doors. They see it. They see everything. They see all the pain, the tragedy that they caused, that they created. They will eventually see it. But the thing is they will no longer be living to express what they are seeing. So just know, you're not suffering for, nothing. It eventually will be seen. It'll eventually be seen. The thing is you got to come above it. They will see it when the time is right, but you got to overcome it. You can't let your trauma create an identity for you. You have to own that trauma. You gotta show it who's boss. That you're not gonna let it run your life, because if you let that trauma run your life, then you're letting those parental figures or guardian figures to constantly rule your life. And there are a lot of adults who are still under the puppet master of their parents or guardians. They're still under it. They don't know how to break it. They've been codependent on them for so long, they don't know how to break free of it. They don't know how to cut the strings. The way to cut the strings is individuality. You got to find who you are before the trauma took place. And when you find who you are before the trauma took place, move forward from there. I read a quote today, and it was supposed to be a funny quote, but the little thing is they don't know how accurate they were. but it was on one of the sober pages that I belonged to. And the picture showed, it said in quotes, it was like, when you've been sober for um, so long that, you start to question who you are. You don't even know who you are anymore. So you just pick up where you are. You just pick up where you were when you were a teenager at the age of like 40. Well, the thing is they don't know how accurate that is. But the thing is the trauma took place way before teen years. It took place more in elementary school. You got close. You got to the teen year part. But the thing is if you go a little past the teen years and you keep going back, you'll find that more trauma occurred. Now, a lot of it might be blacked out. But the thing is you can still resonate. Something was off. Something took place there. And see, that's when a therapist comes in handy, because they can, they got their own techniques of helping you remember to the best of your ability so you find peace with it. But the thing is once they find where that severe trauma took place, then they can be able to alleviate the pain that happened. But the thing is this is very crucial here now, because now you're going to have to start over from square one, but they got a process. They got like an aging process, man. And it's pretty fast. I went through it, I remember my caseworker, she said, James, you want to play toys, you play with toys. You want to wear certain shirts or something, will you wear it? You whatever you want to do, you do it. Like, you just go for it. So I had toys, man. I had a big teddy bear that I would dress up. Like, I had all that stuff going. I'm a grown adult, man. My job was cool. They let me bring my toys into work, and, I'd fidget with them and stuff, and it was cool. But the thing is that process didn't even last that long. It was probably like a couple months. But they eventually got me mentally caught up. I mean, because when I was homeless, like, I was still in that that very vulnerable child state. Like, I was still in that aging process with my caseworker. But the thing is like, it took like 6 months. It was about 6 months. And eventually we got me mentally caught up to a point to where, where I was kind of on stable grounds. And then, we just worked from there. But I mean, it's a lot to do. But the thing is I was lucky enough to get it done in my 20s. Now imagine getting it done in your 30s or your 40s, or heck, maybe even your 50s. It's going to be even more of a process the more you neglect it. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you got to remember, they will never really see. Well, in living, if you're wanting to implement my theory, that happens after life. Once they are done, they are showed and revealed everything that they did wrong. Everything. Like, it's going to be a wide, it's going to be a time, a time thing. It's going to be a long process, and they're going to feel every bit of pain, misery, turmoil, and everything that they cause. They're going to get the visuals, the complete visuals. They're going to see everything. They're going to hear everything. They're going to see it from a spectator's point of view, like as if it was like on surveillance camera. They're going to see the footage. They're going to see every single thing. So don't worry, you're not suffering for nothing. Like, it eventually will be seen. But in living form, they never see it. And they never will. Even if you try to explain it to them on what you're going through, you're going to be talking to a brick wall. they're not going to know how to even handle what you're saying. It'll just go one ear and out the other. It's like you're speaking a foreign language. If you speak anything psychology related or mental health related to a generation where mental health and psychology was completely neglected 100%, it's not going to make any sense. You know, they can say that, yeah, I watched that documentary. I totally understand what you're going through now. Documentaries are documentaries. Like, that's not telling a complete story. That's just informing you on, like, you know, like a general aspect of something. You're not getting into the nitty gritty, you know? It's like if you watch a documentary on autism, well, geez Louise, what portion of autism did you watch? Because autism is like a heavy, big spectrum. Like watching a documentary on autism, that's not going to educate you on anything. You know what I mean? That's just going to show you just a very small sector of something that is so big. But the thing is that's how psychology is. That's how the mental health field is. With these diagnoses and how long mental health and psychology have been neglected generation after generation after generation, these things have created a spectrum. PTSD has a big spectrum. Schizophrenia has a big spectrum. You know, the list can go on and on and on with all these different diagnoses. It is a big, giant spectrum either way because it's been neglected so long. And generation after generation, the older generations, they found normality in their mental state. And, you know, with that, the kids are learning from that, you know, so it's just getting carried down, you know, with each generation. But, you know, like I said, they will never really see. They will never really see.